Henrietta, our daughter-in-law, loudly said that elderly folks like us, being of a different class, shouldn't come to the housewarming party. We were shocked by her audacity and couldn't find words to respond. I had kept silent for our eldest son Warren's sake. But Henrietta's disrespectful attitude reached my limit. My husband Reagan and I exchanged glances, nodded in agreement, and told Henrietta that we understood. Satisfied, she smiled and went back to Warren. I am Bridget, 73 years old, and Warren is our son with Reagan. Warren was always quiet but started to assert himself in college. He introduced us to the woman he was seriously dating, and we happily consented to their marriage. Around 3 years into their marriage, during Christmas, Warren and his wife were coming home for the first time. I was excited to spend time with Henrietta. When they arrived, Henrietta initially seemed shy but gradually relaxed. As it got dark, I stood up to prepare dinner, and Henrietta offered to help in the kitchen. While we were in the kitchen, an unfamiliar voice, lower and harsher than usual, said, "It's cold. This house is too cold." I turned towards Henrietta in disbelief, and she was rubbing her hands together with discontent. In an unhappy tone, she expressed her dislike for old houses and complained about Warren insisting they come. Stunned, I was speechless as Henrietta vented her bad mood at me. She even made a disparaging comment, suggesting my appearance was all an act to get married. "I'm tired of waiting. Hurry up and get ready." "I'm hungry," said Henrietta, seemingly annoyed by my stunned silence. She gestured towards the stove and spoke dismissively. I hurried to obey, probably more shaken than I realized. Once I started moving, Henrietta did nothing but dictate, not lifting a finger to help. She complained about everything, criticized my methods, yet did nothing herself. By the time the preparations were done, and it was just a matter of serving the food, Henrietta suddenly became active, charming Reagan and Warren, and blushing at their praise. It was then I finally understood this was Henrietta's true nature. 10 years later, Warren and his wife were returning for a visit. Henrietta had shown her true colors many times, but only in my presence. She never behaved that way in front of Reagan or Warren. I had kept silent, thinking it might be a misunderstanding, but the same things happened every time they visited, confirming my suspicions. Hearing they were coming back, I felt a bit downhearted. While planning to avoid being alone with Henrietta as much as possible, the doorbell rang. Sighing, I opened the door to find Warren standing alone. Surprised not to see Henrietta, I involuntarily looked around for her. Warren, noticing my reaction, spoke with a hint of apology. "Sorry, Mom. Henrietta had some urgent work and will join us later. She said it's okay to go ahead with the grave visit without her." It seemed Henrietta wouldn't be joining until her work was finished, and I felt a sense of relief at the thought of not having to witness Henrietta's behavior, even for a little while. I welcomed Warren into the house, and Reagan, who was in the living room, noticed Henrietta's absence and asked about her. While preparing tea, I found myself sighing deeply without realizing it. We decided to relax for the day and postpone the grave visit to the next day. When Warren informed Henrietta, she responded, "Understood, but I still can't finish my work and come over, so please apologize to the others for me." Reagan laughed it off as unavoidable, but I couldn't help feeling that Henrietta just didn't want to attend the grave visit. However, I couldn't voice such thoughts, so I just said not to worry about it, and we spent the day uneventfully. The next day, after finishing visiting the grave and relaxing at home, Henrietta called, saying, "Finally finished with work, so I'll be heading over tonight." The timing of her call right after the grave visit seemed a bit off to Reagan and Warren too, hastening my suspicion. That evening, just as we were about to have dinner, Henrietta arrived. She appeared a bit sweaty and out of breath, as if she had rushed. I frowned involuntarily, but Reagan and Warren were so pleased to see her that I decided not to say anything. Henrietta, having been freed from work, was told to take a shower first while dinner was being prepared. She replied somewhat apologetically. When she emerged from the bathroom at dinner time, she muttered upon seeing the food on the tray, "Sandwiches, that's it? After a hot day at the grave, I'm tired of eating this." I managed to avoid going to someone else's grave in this heat, and all I get is a simple meal. Henrietta tied up her hair and walked towards the living room. I felt angry but couldn't find the words to confront her. In the living room, she instantly started chatting happily with Regan, leaving me silently frustrated. Another 10 years passed, and Warren decided to move from his apartment to a house. After discussing it with Henrietta, they decided to pay as much down payment as possible themselves, but asked us for a little help with the shortfall. We couldn't refuse our dear Warren's request, so we immediately agreed and transferred the needed amount. Soon after, Warren informed us that their new house was built, and they planned the housewarming party with both families. I hadn't seen Henrietta's parents since the wedding, so I eagerly agreed to attend, considering everything that had happened. Warren was delighted with my response and immediately shared the news with Henrietta, who I imagined was on the other end of the phone. Thus, we were set to attend the housewarming party next month. A few days after this was decided, Henrietta unexpectedly visited alone. I was surprised by her unannounced visit and opened the door without realizing it was her. Looking up, I saw Henrietta with an unhappy expression, and I was taken aback. "I'll come in." Henrietta quickly checked for keys in the entrance and pushed past me to enter the house. Her arrogant behavior continued as she walked into the living room, probably because she noticed that Regan's keys weren't in the entrance. Indeed, Regan was out for his daily walk and wouldn't be back for a while. Taking advantage of this, Henrietta had barged into our home. Feeling trapped, I followed her into the living room where she waited for me without sitting down. Before I could even close the door, Henrietta glared at me and said, "Bridget, you're planning to come to the housewarming party. It's a nuisance, so can you please not come?" Surprised, I responded, "What are you suddenly talking about? Regan wasn't there, so Henrietta," crossing her arms, started speaking in a high-handed manner. "You're planning to tattle to my parents about me, aren't you?" Henrietta glared at me with evident disgust, clearly not wanting her parents to know about her behavior. She must have specifically chosen a time when Warren was working, and she had a day off, knowing about Regan's routine walk, and had timed her visit accordingly. Henrietta was cunning indeed. Calmly, I replied, "I had no such intention, but now that you mention it, it might not be a bad idea." Henrietta frowned in annoyance, saying, "It's no joke. I married Warren because he's good-looking and earns decently. I don't want to deal with annoying relatives revealing." Henrietta's expression froze when she realized I had caught on to the true reason for marrying Warren. As I worried about her strange behavior, the living room door opened behind me. Turning around, I saw Regan, who looked surprised as he gazed at Henrietta, realizing that her conversation with me had been overheard. Henrietta clicked her tongue but decided to brazen it out, telling us the real reason. "Elderly folks like you, being of a different class, shouldn't come to the housewarming party." We were astounded by her audacity, at a loss for words. I reached my limit with Henrietta, daring to say such things even in Warren's absence. I had kept silent for Warren's sake until now, but I could no longer overlook such behavior. My husband Regan seemed to share my sentiment. At her utterly disrespectful attitude, we exchanged glances, nodded in agreement, and said to Henrietta, "Understood." Satisfied, she smiled and went back to Warren. Left behind, we felt suddenly very tired and sat down on the sofa. On the day of the housewarming party, we didn't go to Warren and his wife's home. We hadn't told Warren anything about the incident with Henrietta. Naturally, he must have thought we were coming. By now, Warren and his wife might be panicking. Sipping coffee with Regan at a cafe, I pondered this. Then Regan's mobile phone rang. He got up, answered the call, and stepped out of the cafe. I quickly paid the bill and followed him out, getting into the car. Regan switched the phone to speaker mode so I could hear Warren's voice too. "Dad, something strange is happening. All my relatives have suddenly got other plans, and you and Mom haven't arrived yet. Even Henrietta's relatives are canceling one after another. What's going on?" Feeling guilty about Warren's anxious tone but deciding to play dumb, we exchanged glances. Who knows what Henrietta's saying? Reagan asked, sounding casual. His acting was so natural that it surprised me. Noticing my reaction, Regan winked and gestured to keep it a secret. I had to stifle a laugh, covering my mouth. Henrietta is also confused. Oh, another call's coming in. I'll call back later. Be safe, coming over. Warren still seemed to expect our visit, making me feel remorseful. But I convinced myself it was necessary to get back at Henrietta. Then my mobile phone rang. It was a relative who was supposed to attend today's party. Feeling sorry but chatting for a bit, I was engaged in a long conversation with a talkative relative when Regan's phone rang again. It was Warren. Regan switched to speaker mode and answered, "Dad, I just spoke to Henrietta's mom. What's going on? If you can still come, please do right away." Warren's voice, sounding close to tears, made me feel a tightness in my chest. Regan looked at me with furrowed brows. After I nodded at Regan, he reassured Warren. "Understood. We'll be right there. Calm down." With that, Warren, sounding relieved, hung up. We who were at a cafe near Warren's new home drove towards his place. Upon arriving and ringing the doorbell, Warren rushed out to greet us. Behind him, Henrietta glared at us with furious eyes. Once inside, Warren ushered us to the living room, waiting for us to sit on the sofa. Eagerly, he asked, "I didn't expect you to arrive so soon. Where were you? What's going on? All our relatives are angry. Henrietta's relatives are apologizing, and I have no idea what's happening." "Calm down, Warren. First of all, congratulations on your new home. I'll explain everything now," I said to calm him down. I turned to Henrietta, who was silently sitting. "You know why we're the only ones here, don't you, Henrietta?" "What do you mean?" Henrietta feigned ignorance, prompting me to sigh lightly before starting. "It seems you don't want us here, but given the current situation, your worries are gone, aren't they? Didn't want us here. What does that mean?" Warren sounded confused. I smiled slightly and continued. "Both your relatives and ours know everything now. Unfortunately, your plans have failed. You've already been reprimanded by your relatives, haven't you?" A low growl unmistakably from Henrietta was heard. Ignoring this, I continued, looking straight at Henrietta. "Given Warren's reaction now, you've been pretending to be good ever since you were dating him. Now that your true nature is exposed, why don't you just accept it?" "I didn't invite you." Her voice, now much quieter than before, made Warren lean in closer to hear her. She repeated, "I didn't invite you. I told you not to come. Why did you come anyway and spread lies among the relatives, framing me? Is that fun for you?" Taken aback by her intensity, Warren recoiled. I sighed at Henrietta, still insisting she was the victim. "Mobile phones are so handy, aren't they, Henrietta?" I nodded at Reagan. He took out his phone, operated it, and then looked at Warren. "I just wanted to marry Warren because he's good-looking and earns decently. I don't want to deal with troublesome relatives. Anyway, elderly folks like you, being of a different class, shouldn't come to the housewarming party." Henrietta's words from that day played from Regan's mobile phone. Henrietta turned pale and looked at Warren. After the playback, Warren turned slowly to Henrietta, his mouth agape. Henrietta tried to deny it, but what excuse could she give after that recording? The weather turned bad, so I cut my walk short and came back only to hear this incredible conversation. I couldn't help but record it. "Glad it was useful," Regan said regretfully. Warren looked at me for confirmation, and I nodded firmly. "I couldn't believe it at first either, Warren, but the truth is there in the recording." Henrietta's true feelings and her last words were said despite my presence. It's hard to escape now. Regan fixed his gaze on Henrietta, questioning how anyone could stay calm knowing she had been deceiving everyone since her dating days with Warren, let alone after their marriage. Seeing his look, Henrietta dropped her shoulders and ceased her struggle. This seemed like an affirmation to Warren, who abruptly stood up and left the house. It happened so suddenly that we couldn't stop him, and although Regan hurried after him, he soon returned. Apparently, Warren had driven off somewhere, leaving his mobile phone behind, making it impossible for us to call him. Henrietta, left behind and surrounded by us, sat trembling and pale, huddled up. As time passed helplessly, Warren eventually returned, holding something in his hand, which he slammed in front of Henrietta, saying quietly, "Sign the divorce papers and leave." Henrietta looked up at Warren, her mouth agape, but Warren repeated himself, took a pen from the holder on the table, and began to fill in his part. After finishing, he forced the pen into Henrietta's hand and tapped on the divorce papers. "Come on, sign, and leave." Overwhelmed, Henrietta, though frightened, filled in her part. She looked at Warren when finished, but he, without making eye contact, was checking for any missing details. Finding no errors, he forcibly made Henrietta stand up and dragged her to the front door. He then pushed Henrietta out of the house, ignoring her attempts to cling to him and throwing her bag outside. "It's late, so I'll submit this tomorrow. Don't ever come back to this property," he said, slamming the door shut and locking it. Henrietta's pleading voice could be heard from outside, but Warren ignored it and turned to apologize to us. "I'm sorry for the trouble. I had no idea she was like that." We could say nothing to his deep apology, just embracing him. Before long, Henrietta's voice faded away. We decided to stay at Warren's new home that night. The next morning, Warren submitted the divorce paper first thing, and his divorce from Henrietta was finalized. Concerned about his heartache, we chose to stay another night. And that evening, with a somewhat calmer Warren, we discussed everything that had happened. As we recounted the past events, Warren listened with clenched fists. Regan, who was also unaware of these details, placed his hand on my shoulder as I spoke. Then we revealed the truth about the current situation. After Henrietta had left, telling us not to come, I learned that Regan had spontaneously recorded the conversation. We decided together to inform Henrietta's parents. When we called and explained the situation, Henrietta's parents, initially in disbelief, changed their attitude and kept apologizing. After hearing the recorded audio, angry about their daughter's misdeeds, they intended to tell the relatives who had planned to attend the housewarming party not to go. After hanging up, we discussed and decided to do the same with our relatives. They too were furious and said they wouldn't attend. That is how the current situation unfolded. Hearing all this, Warren's shoulders drooped again, worried but unable to do anything. We decided to spend another night. The next day, Warren came into the living room, looking relieved, and shared what happened the previous night. He had apparently contacted his former in-laws. Henrietta was now at her parents' home, being disowned and facing eviction. They also planned to bring alimony, which would be imposed on Henrietta as her debt. While Warren felt this was not enough, he seemed more settled than expected. After returning home, we immediately started packing up our old house. Now dated, it was set to be handed over. The house was actually being remodeled for us to live in together. Since Warren was at work during the day, the renovations were to take place. Though costly to modify a newly built home, with some financial gain from the recent events and our help, the decision was made. While waiting for the house's remodeling, we were happily clearing out our old home.